July 18, 1945. Western Pacific Ocean, just east of the Japanese home islands. A battered American escort carrier group pushes slowly through choppy gray water under a low ceiling of clouds. The war is nearing its final months, but the skies above Japan remain some of the most dangerous in the world. On the flight deck of the escort carrier USS Bataan, mechanics rush between aircraft, preparing them for another strike mission against Japanese airfields on Kyushu. Among them is a young aviation machinist's mate, a man most pilots barely notice. His name is Aviation Machinist's Mate 3rd Class John Jack Keller. To the fighter pilots, Keller is just another grease monkey, the man who wipes oil from engines and changes spark plugs on the mighty F4U Corsair fighters parked along the deck. But on this morning, events will unfold that no one aboard the carrier could possibly predict, because within hours, that same mechanic will climb into a crippled aircraft, launch into the sky, and face nearly 50 Japanese fighters alone. What happens next will become one of the most extraordinary and forgotten moments of aerial combat in the Pacific War. Please subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. By the summer of 1945, the United States Navy had pushed its carrier forces to the very doorstep of Japan. American task groups operated daily off the coast of Kyushu, launching fighter sweeps and bombing missions against Japanese airfields, supply depots, and shipyards. But even in the final months of the war, Japan's air defenses remained dangerous. Many airfields still housed experienced pilots flying the legendary Mitsubishi A6M Zero. Though older than newer American aircraft, the Zero remained extremely maneuverable and deadly in the hands of skilled pilots. For American naval aviators flying the vought F4U Corsair, the skies above Japan were never safe. The Corsair itself was a fearsome machine. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, the aircraft could exceed 400 miles per hour, climb rapidly, and carry 650 caliber machine guns capable of shredding enemy fighters in seconds. But the Corsair had its quirks. Its massive engine generated enormous torque, making takeoffs tricky, and its long nose made carrier landings notoriously difficult. For these reasons, maintenance crews played a critical role in keeping the aircraft combat ready. Among those crews aboard USS Bataan was Jack Keller, a 22-year-old mechanic from Ohio. Keller had never expected to see combat. He enlisted in the Navy in 1943 and was trained to maintain aircraft engines, not fly them. But like many mechanics, he had spent hundreds of hours around Corsairs. He understood their engines, their controls, their quirks, and occasionally, during quiet moments at sea, pilots allowed trusted mechanics to sit inside the cockpit, sometimes even taxi the aircraft along the deck. Still, no one aboard Bataan imagined Keller would ever need those experiences in combat, because on the morning of July 18, 1945, everything would change. At 0800 hours, the carrier group prepared to launch a routine fighter sweep. 8 Corsairs from fighter squadron VF-84 rolled into position along the flight deck. Their mission was simple: fly north toward Kyushu, destroy Japanese aircraft on the ground, then return before noon. By 08:15 hours, the first Corsair roared down the deck and lifted into the gray sky. Within minutes, the rest followed. Soon the carrier deck fell quiet again, leaving only mechanics, deck crews, and standby aircraft waiting for the next mission. Among those aircraft was Corsair number 122, parked near the forward elevator. The fighter had suffered engine trouble the previous day. Jack Keller had spent nearly the entire night working on the machine, replacing a damaged fuel line, cleaning fouled spark plugs, inspecting the massive R2800 engine cylinder by cylinder. By dawn, the aircraft was technically operational again, but not fully combat ready. A cracked hydraulic line still leaked fluid slowly, and the radio transmitter worked only intermittently. For that reason, the Corsair remained grounded, or at least, it was supposed to. At 0940 hours, the quiet morning suddenly shattered. Radar operators aboard the escort destroyer USS Wren detected incoming aircraft approaching from the north. Multiple formations, speed, roughly 300 miles per hour, altitude, descending rapidly. Air raid warning, enemy aircraft approaching. Deck crews looked skyward as dark shapes appeared through the cloud cover. Dozens of them. Japanese fighters. Later estimates would place their number at nearly 50 aircraft. Most were A6M Zeros launched from airfields near Kagoshima. Their mission was simple: strike the American carrier group, and they had caught the fleet at a dangerous moment. Most of the carrier's fighters were still away on their strike mission. Only 2 combat-ready Corsairs remained on deck. The rest were either damaged, refueling, or undergoing maintenance. Within minutes, the Japanese fighters would be over the fleet, and the carriers would be nearly defenseless. At 09:45 hours, the first Zeros broke through the clouds. They came screaming downward toward the ships below. Deck guns erupted instantly. The deafening thunder of 40mm Bofors cannons and 20mm Oerlikon guns filled the air. Tracers streaked skyward, but the Japanese fighters pressed their attack. 2 Corsairs rushed to launch. The first managed to take off successfully. The second struggled with engine trouble and stalled near the end of the deck. Suddenly, the carrier had only 1 fighter airborne against dozens of attackers. Chaos spread across the flight deck. Mechanics scrambled to move aircraft. Pilots rushed toward cockpits. But there simply wasn't time. The Zeros were already diving. Machine gun fire slashed across the water. Bombs splashed near the escort ships. And that was when Jack Keller made a decision that stunned everyone around him. He ran toward Corsair number 1-22, the very aircraft he had repaired hours earlier. A plane that technically wasn't cleared to fly. A plane with a leaking hydraulic system and a faulty radio. Nearby officers shouted at him to stop, but Keller kept running. He climbed onto the wing, dropped into the cockpit, and began the engine start sequence. The massive R-2800 engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life with a thunderous rumble. Flight deck crews stared in disbelief. A mechanic, about to launch into a combat zone against dozens of enemy fighters. At 09:48 hours, with Japanese aircraft already strafing the outer escort ships, Keller pushed the throttle forward. The Corsair rolled toward the catapult. There was no time for proper clearance, no time for briefing, no wingman, just a single aircraft, and nearly 50 enemies above. The catapult officer hesitated for only a second, then gave the signal. The Corsair shot forward down the deck and lifted into the sky. What happened next stunned both American sailors and Japanese pilots alike. Jack Keller climbed sharply into the chaotic sky above the fleet. Without radio communication, he had no guidance from the carrier, but he could see the enemy clearly, Zeros circling overhead. Some diving toward the ships, others climbing to prepare another attack run. Keller pushed the Corsair higher. The powerful engine roared as the aircraft clawed for altitude. Within seconds, he was approaching the lower edge of the Japanese formation. And then he did something unexpected. Instead of circling to engage cautiously, he charged directly into the formation. The Corsair's 6 machine guns opened fire. A stream of 50 caliber bullets tore through the nearest Zero. The fighter burst into flames and spiraled downward. Japanese pilots scattered in surprise. They had expected heavy resistance from multiple American fighters, not a single aircraft attacking head-on. Keller used the Corsair's speed advantage, diving through the formation, firing short bursts, then climbing away before the Zeros could surround him. For several minutes, the sky above the carrier group became a whirlwind of twisting aircraft. Zeros trying to chase the lone Corsair, the Corsair diving and climbing with brutal speed. At 09:53 hours, Keller scored his second kill. A Zero attempting to dive toward the carrier crossed his guns. The burst shattered its wing. The aircraft tumbled into the sea. Moments later, a third Zero exploded under his guns. American sailors watched in disbelief from the decks below, a single fighter holding back an entire formation. By 09:58 hours, the Japanese formation had lost several aircraft. But more importantly, their attack had stalled. Instead of diving toward the carriers, the Zeros now focused entirely on the aggressive Corsair harassing them. And that bought the fleet precious time. At 1002 hours, the returning strike fighters from VF-84 finally appeared on radar. Within minutes, American Corsairs roared into the battle. Faced with multiple new opponents, the Japanese formation finally broke away. One by one, the Zeros turned north and retreated toward Kyushu. The attack was over. When the last enemy aircraft disappeared beyond the clouds, Jack Keller finally turned back toward the carrier. Only then did he realize how badly his aircraft had been damaged. Bullet holes peppered the wings. Hydraulic pressure was nearly gone, and fuel levels were dangerously low. Landing a Corsair under normal conditions was already difficult. Landing one with failing hydraulics on a pitching carrier deck was another matter entirely. But Keller had no choice. At 10:15 hours, he approached the USS Bataan. The deck crew watched silently as the damaged Corsair lined up for landing. The aircraft touched down hard, bounced once, then slammed onto the deck. The arresting hook caught the third wire, and the fighter skidded to a stop. For a moment, the deck was completely silent. Then sailors erupted into cheers. The mechanic climbed out of the cockpit, shaking with adrenaline. Moments later, squadron pilots surrounded him in disbelief. The man they had called a grease monkey had just helped save the carrier group. Post-battle analysis credited Keller with 3 confirmed enemy aircraft destroyed and at least 2 more damaged. More importantly, his aggressive attack had disrupted the Japanese strike long enough for the returning fighters to arrive. Without that delay, the carriers might have taken direct bomb hits. For his actions that day, aviation machinist's mate Jack Keller received the Navy Cross, one of the Navy's highest awards for valor. A mechanic who had never intended to be a fighter pilot, yet when the moment came, he climbed into a crippled aircraft, faced nearly 50 enemy fighters, and fought them alone. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.